like a Hellcat.
Hey YouTube, how you doing, guys? How you guys doing, YouTube? How you guys doing? This is your host, King Gio, and today I want to talk about something serious, something that's been plaguing a lot of women here in the United States, but it's plaguing even more in the small island of Puerto Rico, where my family's from. As you know, last week, ex-boxer Felix Verdugo was charged with murder in Puerto Rico for the killing death of his ex-girlfriend and their child. She was going to have a baby from him. And as all of us was diving into this of how could this be, how could this happen, we didn't see a bigger picture behind this. I mean, there's a woman dead. I'm talking about as far as the violence is concerned in the island on women. Reporter from CBS, David Bergno, which I'm grateful that he did bring this up. He brought us to the attention, to the forefront of a young lady that you see right here. Her name is Andrea Ruiz Costa. This young woman was seeking an order of protection for her ex-boyfriend, and she was denied the order of protection. Now, she went for a probable cause hearing, and the prosecutor on that probable cause hearing was not there. And the judge, I think this was the third time going in front of a judge, and she had made reports twice before. She's even made phone calls where she's recorded, where it states where she's been, that she fears for her life. Where it states, well, I don't know what number of things that it states, but one of the things that I know from what I hear is that she's made several recordings of this. And when she went to the court the third time, that her ex-boyfriend was there, because they told him that he had to be there. They gave him a court date. He shows up. She shows up, but the DA doesn't show up. The prosecutor doesn't show up, and so the judge decides to hear the case on his own. And he says there's no probable cause. He says there is no probable cause. No probable cause at all. He leaves it at that. The following week, this young lady was found in the woods, half burnt and killed, and she was dead. And then the courts has the audacity to say, we failed Andrea. No shit. This is the way the process in Puerto Rico goes, for you guys who don't know. If you accuse me, or I accuse you, and the cops hears your version, here's my version, he calls the DA, and the DA tells him or her, we have cause, arrest him or her. So they arrest me, or they arrest you. They take you to the courthouse, blah, 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 follow them, you see the judge, or whatever the case may be. If the DA says, this makes kind of iffy, then he'll give you a date, maybe the following day, 2 days or 3 days, a week later, for you to go in front of him or her office. And then you tell your part, I tell my part. If the DA finds that there is cause, that he or she thinks that there was a crime committed, and then he'll say, you got to go in front of the judge. The same day you go in front of the judge, and the judge decides whether there is probable cause. And not probable cause, the judge decides if there is enough evidence to charge you. I'm going. And then on your second court date, that's when both parties goes and the judge decides whether if there is probable cause. If there's probable cause, and they'll take it forward, and then within 2 or 3 months you go to trial. That's the way it is. It's not like here. And it's weird, right? Because I remember when I was in Puerto Rico, there were 2 guys in the house robbing the house. They called the cops. They knew, because they knew the neighbors knew that there was nobody there. I mean, that the owners were out on vacation. And as the thieves are inside the house, I was like, yo, why don't you guys go inside? He's like, oh, we can't go inside. I was like, what do you mean you can't go inside? There's a crime being committed. Oh no, by law we can't go inside, because if something happens to the door or something happens to the perp, then we can get sued. Because in Puerto Rico, until a few years ago, if you shot a perp, or if you hurt a perp, or you kill a perp in your own house for defending yourself, because Puerto Rico was not a stand your ground, you can get sued and you can get charged. Can you imagine that? You break a thief's leg, back, or whatever the case, because they went into your house, and you get sued and you get charged for that. So that changed a few years ago. And So here you got Andrea, who went to the courts 3 times, and there was no DA. Now the judges conveyed the other day, and they said there has to be a DA when they do domestic violence charges. It's supposed to be a DA, period. And that judge that didn't do justice to this young lady should be disbarred. Because if there's no DA there, and apparently he didn't know or didn't listen to the tapes that she had made before of her other complaints, then he should have made it aware. He should have said to himself, you know what? There's no DA here, so I'm not gonna pursue this from his moment. But both of you stay here. I'm gonna make sure that I call the DA. The DA has to come here. You call the DA and say, listen, you have a case here. You need to come down here now. There's no reason why this young lady, she looks frantic, she looks fearful. And there's no reason why you cannot be here to represent this young lady. I need to know what's going on here now. You got an hour, whatever the case may be. And you don't proceed until that DA shows up. Simple. You can't say, I'm going to leave it for another day, because there's a young lady. And now granted, there are females out there who have played the system, because I've seen them. My brother right now is going in Puerto Rico. He's going through a case. He never did anything to the girl, but yet she did. She said he did, which we had. That he has witnesses that say he's going to court. He has an ankle bracelet, and he never touched the girl. They argued. That's about it. He went his way. He went her way, and cops arrested him, domestic violence, and they still go to court. But they gave him an ankle bracelet. And you couldn't and here's this girl who's fearful for her life. Couldn't get her the help that she needed. Couldn't say, you know what, I want to hold you here until we see this. Or you know, they could have taken her and put her in a domestic violence shelter until this case was over. But nothing. But you know what's that? To even think to say that there was no DA? There was no DA? And the thing that David Bagnolo said, no, this is not the only case that's gone on in Puerto Rico. There have been thousands of cases like this. When I was in Puerto Rico, there was a lady in Salinas, Puerto Rico. She was on the phone with 911 for 45 minutes because her ex-husband was at the door, knocking on that door. And you hear it on the 911 call. And that lady, the dispatcher, said, we cannot send nobody there because there are no cops. She said, this is what she said. She said, all the cops are out giving out tickets. Giving out tickets. Now, Puerto Rico has 2 classes of cops. They have municipal cops and they have state cops. Okay, state cop can arrest anyone, and municipal cops can only stay in the municipality where they work at. They cannot go to another municipality and arrest them, where they can be chasing someone. But you know those stories. So because they were giving out tickets, this lady cannot get a cop to go over her house, and you hear it for 45 minutes, banging on the door. So this guy breaks in the house and unfortunately kills this woman. He stabbed her 90 times. 90 times. Okay? The only reason Verdugo got caught was because the cameras, and they knew, they spoke to him the girl spoke to him the day before. But murders in Puerto Rico don't get solved. I think I would say maybe 10% of the murders in Puerto Rico are solved. If that. I mean, there's over like 600 or 700 murders a year. And so 10% of that would be what, 80 murders? If that. I'm talking about if that, guys. If that. Maybe less, probably. Because look at Hector Camacho. The boxers. Hector Camacho died in Puerto Rico. He got murdered in Puerto Rico. Where are his killers? Killer or killers? No one we found. So many of them. You see this kid right here? This kid's 10 years old. I think he was 10 or 7 or 8, something like that. His name is Lorenzo. We call him in Puerto Rico Niño Lorenzo. This kid's mother, Ana Cacho, was in her house doing drugs, her and 4 other people. Something happened that she took this kid, she took her son all bloody to the hospital. She cleaned the murders. She cleaned everything. When she got to the hospital, said that the kid he had fallen from his bed. So I said, okay. When the autopsy came, this kid had 3 stab wounds in his face. One was at his temple. Had a broken nose and a broken jaw. How could this happen with a he fell off the bed and has 3 stab wounds? How? And the bed was like maybe like 3 feet high. How do you get a stab wounds? How? And yet one of those guys, one of the guy is, or I don't know if he still is, was an FBI agent. You can Google it up. You can Google Nino Lorenzo, Nino Lorenzo, and you will see. And then you had her and 4 other individuals who were doing drugs in the house. And then out of those 4 individuals, one was an FBI agent. The other one, they try to blame one guy called Manco. And the Manco means that either you're missing this part of your hand or this part, or you're missing your leg. So they call him Manco. So they try to blame him towards like 3 years ago. They try to blame him, saying that this man climbed a 15-foot high wall, 15 feet, just with one hand. They arrested him because after 7 years, 8 years, nothing. They wanted to arrest him. They arrested him because they tried to put the blame on him. And nothing. Why? Because my understanding is that this kid's mother, Anacacho, I think it's her uncle works for the Department of Justice, her uncle or her aunt, something like that, and they haven't touched it. To this day, they haven't touched it. The statute of limitations already passed, but they never charged her with endangering the welfare of a child, of a minor. Not just only of him, of the other 2 girls. She had 2 daughters. Them two, they're doing drugs in that house. So they didn't charge you with what you would call it. They didn't charge you with endangering the welfare of a minor. They didn't charge you for neglect. None of that. Now, if it would have been one of the women who lived in the projects, and it's been documented and it's been seen, and you can look it up in the news about women that has left their kids alone because they're from the projects, they get arrested. They get charged for endangering the welfare of a minor. But she didn't get charged. And 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, the statute of limitations for that charge itself just went away. Because there's only things 5 years. So that's statute of limitation. So they didn't even charge her with that, bro. And she's doing drugs, and this kid had 3 stab wounds to the face. That's how bad justice in Puerto Rico is. You get caught with smoking a joint in Puerto Rico, it's an automatic 3 years. Automatic. I'm not lying to you. It's an automatic 3 years. Meanwhile, my uncle was at a bar, because my uncle was an alcoholic, and he drank, and he got into a fight with 3 young guys. One of the guys punched him, they jumped him, he hit the ground, started bleeding, he went to a coma, and died. And I'm like, this is not murder, of course it's not. But those kids got 3 years probation. Regardless of whether it was a fight, who ensued, or whatever the case, but someone lost their life. Because the other person didn't have these kids or whoever they were, didn't have the right mind to say, you know what, this guy's drunk. I'm just going to leave him alone. Why even bother with this guy? And my uncle was the type of person that didn't bother nobody. He didn't get drunk. I mean, he got drunk to drink. But at the end that he liked to talk to girls. Women, I should say. But I drank with my uncle. He's never gotten stupid with nobody. Never. So, to say that he started something, no. So they got 3 years probation, while others get 3 years of prison just for having a joint. And in Puerto Rico, it's like $55,000 to house an inmate. But in Puerto Rico, you don't go to county jail because there's no county jail. You go straight to prison. You go to the processing center, and from there you go to prison until you await trial. Awaiting trial, guys. There is no county jail. There's none of that. It's straight to prison. There's only one woman prison and the rest are male. That's how the justice system is in Puerto Rico. It's horrible. There have been killings of transgender. They have not been found. Their killer or killers have not been found. Because justice in Puerto Rico is not to serve the rich. I mean, not to serve the poor, it's to serve the rich. Like, case in point, Anacacho. Look at this woman, Andrea, went to the courts and there was no prosecutor. There was no prosecution. There was no prosecutor was in that courthouse. How can that even happen? And then the judge has the audacity to say, let's go to trial. I mean, let's do this hearing and see this probable cause. That shouldn't even have gone to that step. And I thank David Bergnon for bringing that to the attention. But there are a lot of stories that David should go into, that he should look into. You can say, wow, corruption is rampant in Puerto Rico. Why do you think Puerto Rico has a deficit so bad? Not because they spend money. It's because a lot of politicians have stolen money. And Donald Trump was right when he said Puerto Rico's full of corruption. But that doesn't mean you stop giving Puerto Rico money. You give it to them, but you gotta make sure that you oversee that money. You have someone looking for that money. Biden's not going to do that. You know, why hasn't any governor in Puerto Rico have yet to say, you know what, I'm going to audit my books. I'm going to audit the books of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. I want to see where this money went to. All right? In 2004, Puerto Rico implemented a 7.0% tax, sale tax, when the then governor, or one of the governors, Alejandro Padilla, asked, where is the money from the sales tax? No one has an idea. No one had an idea where the money went to. And he's searching, and boom. So he had to raise the tax to 12.5, higher than any state in the United States. Higher. 12.5. And what all he had to do was audit. But why don't they audit? Because he knows, and other governors know, even to this governor knows, that if he audited the books, some of his friends will go to jail. Some of his closest friends, some of his closest allies will go to jail. He don't want that. No, none of those governors do. That's why independence is no good for Puerto Rico. That's why even statehood is no good for Puerto Rico. I prefer Puerto Rico staying the way that it is now, a Commonwealth, and let them take away all that corruption. And then when you take away all that corruption, and then you come to the States and say, you know what, we want to be part of the United States. Because the only reason that the PNP, the Blue Party of Puerto Rico, wants a statehood is because they got, number one, they're going to get those 5 congressional seats. Those 5 seats, they get them. And then Puerto Rico will federalized, will be the state with the most funds, because they fall under the poverty line. They'll be poorer than Mississippi. Mississippi is the poorest state in the union. Puerto Rico will go even lower than that. So that means federal funds will have to triple. People that get welfare, they will get an astronomical amount of money in welfare. It's the truth. 60% of the population in Puerto Rico is on welfare. 60% out of 3.3 million people. That's a lot. Would I like to see Puerto Rico a state? But if they're going to become a state, I want them to be a state for the right reasons. Yes, we do need equality. Yes, we do need the equal rights that we get that we get here in the United States. Puerto Rico does deserve it. And so does the other islands, Guam, and all those. Because why? Because those men and women have fought in wars. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korean War. They gave their lives. When the United States need help, who do they call? Guam, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands. They get men and women from these little islands to fight for this country. Isn't that fair? Puerto Rico had the second most, the second largest police force in the nation. New York had 33,000. Puerto Rico had 17,000. For a small island, that was big. But then came the cuts. And the police pensions were slashed. No more police pension. So they had to go elsewhere. So now the police force in Puerto Rico went from 17,000. I think it's 13, 12,000 or less. You go to the projects. Cops won't go in the projects because drug dealers in the projects, they own that. People don't say nothing because they're scared. Murders be happening there because they're scared. But that's an island of 3.3 million people. How can you let drug dealers control your island? You're an island of 3.3. This is not Mexico, where Mexico is corrupt. Right? This is Puerto Rico. 3.3 million people. In Puerto Rico, the prisoners are able to vote. Just imagine that. You go to jail, you go to prison, you can vote. So when every 4 years, when it's come election time, these governors, they go to the jail population. Hey, what you want this? You want? They go to the Nietas, and they go to the 27s, and they go to this, and they go to these gang members. What do you want? What do you want? What? And they'll say, yo, the gang members will be like, yo, this is who we're gonna vote. Even if you don't want to vote for that person, you have to vote. There's only like 4 or 5 gangs in the Puerto Rico penal system. Can you imagine that? 22,000 people voting. That's the vote. So when you own a prison, you still have the right to vote. Isn't that you're supposed to evoke that right? And you did violate your civil right when you committed a crime. That's what happened here. I mean, maybe you could say certain crimes that don't deserve, but you got murderers, you got rapists, still voting. Then that makes them feel somewhat part of society, I guess. But why isn't that law taken out already? So, as a society in Puerto Rico, they have to do something with domestic violence. You just can't let these women die. Men, think, guys. If your woman breaks up with you, let it be. Let go. Find yourself another woman. There's a lot of women out there, bro. There's no need for you to be fixated on one woman after you break up. She don't want to be with you, just walk away. Learn to walk away. You see her with another guy? Oh, well, you had your chance. You can't find yourself another girl. There's no need for you to fixate yourself with a woman. She breaks up with you, you let her go. Women the same way. If the man lets you go, let him go. There are other men out there. You know, have a tendency to, men have a tendency, some men, not all. Or if you ain't mine, if you ain't mine, you ain't nobody's. No. And then when she breaks up with him and he sees her with another man, he gets all pissed off. Yo, you had your chance. If you truly care for a girl, if you truly care for a woman, you let her go. Let her find happiness somewhere else. She couldn't find it with you. So then you have to self-analyze yourself and say, you know, where did I go wrong? So when I get myself another relationship, I don't go through the same thing. You just can't go through one relationship and something happens here, you go to another one and you don't change, because the same thing is going to keep on going. So every girl that you get is going to leave you. So you have to internalize yourself and say, what am I doing wrong? You can even ask her, listen, before, you know, what is it that I did wrong? Oh, you want to be more romantic, you want to this, you want to, okay. Or you watch too much on Facebook, or you watch too much on the computer. Okay, so those are the things that you got to do. Don't be too much on Facebook. Don't be too much on the computer. But give your girl the attention that she needs or she wants. But if she breaks up with you, that's it. And judges out there, if a woman goes up to you and you think, back her up. Same thing with men. There are men who are being abused right now, but they don't say something because their ego, you know, they don't want to say, my wife is beating on me. But the same thing, there are men out there who are being beaten. And you should come out and say something, because that gives more men to come out. And there's no shame in that. Your wife hits you, your wife hits you. Your girlfriend hits you. Nothing that you're less of a man. It's just that you don't know. Either you don't know how to say no, you don't know how to back off, or you just don't know. And if you don't know, that's okay. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. Everybody's not born aligned. You know? I'm not a tough guy, blah, blah, blah. I'm not. Never was. But there are certain things that I will not allow to happen to me. I won't allow a woman to put her hands on me. I won't allow a man to put his hands on me. If a woman puts her hands on me, I get my stuff and go. Because I don't want to put my hands on her, so that's it. I'm out. I learned that. So we got to do the same thing. Justice has to be done for women for domestic violence. We have to do something as a group. Puerto Rico has to unite itself. Have to ask Congress to do something. Have to do something about Congress. Puerto Rico has something to do with the financial. Puerto Rico has to stop voting for the PNP, Popular. I mean, you had a lot of good people who were independent. You had a lot of good people who were. Alexander Lugaro was a great candidate for the people. Dalmau is a great candidate. You have all these people that are either independent or independent in their own way. They made their own. The PIP been there for the Independent Party has been there for years now. Those guys are smart. Those guys were the best was for Puerto Rico. But what happens is, because they were in the independent party, the people of Puerto Rico say, "Oh, we're going to vote for them. They're going to make Puerto Rico independent." No, not understanding that doesn't happen like that. In order for Puerto Rico to become independent, it has to go through a process, and Congress has to approve it. The United States Congress has to approve it. And you think that the United States Congress is going to allow Puerto Rico to go? When Puerto Rico has a lot of resources that's given military-wise, it's given Puerto Rico. That's why Puerto Rico is kind of because of military reasons. So is Hawaii, and so is Hawaii became a state, and Alaska became a state. Then those two didn't become a state because of resources. They became a state because political reasons, right? Canada. I mean, Alaska's next to Russia. So if you want to attack Russia, you can just go right in. Or if Russia wanted to attack you, they're going to attack you from the north. So that stops that. When Japan attacked Hawaii, it was supposed to be vulnerable. Yeah, okay. They attacked us through Hawaii. We were vulnerable there, right? So we make that a state. So in case of something does happen in Hawaii, they can warn us. It'll take a couple of hours before they get to the States, so we can be prepared. Same thing with Puerto Rico. You couldn't do anything with the other islands because the other islands were independent. So you made Puerto Rico a commonwealth. If anything does happen, boom. You can warn the American people. Okay? You know, and plus the United States, not, you know, Alaska and Hawaii, they already spoke English, and Hawaii didn't even want to be part of the United States. They were forced, and you know they're not going to make Puerto Rico a state, a Hispanic state that only speaks Spanish. Their official language, of course, is English. Here in the United States, there is no official language. The United States does not have an official language. So if they ever ask you what's the official language of the United States, say none, because there is none. But Puerto Rico is English. And they changed it to English so the Americans can say, the United States of America can say, you know what, at least they have the official language is English. But it's not. So they're not going to give us state. We're Spanish, bro. We're brown. But they don't know we're brown, we're white, we're black. Puerto Rico has a variety of people. But they're not going to give it to you. So yes, so this is what we have to focus on. We have to focus on how do we change the laws? How do we you know, if I'm all for people who are charged with domestic violence and they got an order of protection, they should have a ankle bracelet. They should be monitored. And if they get convicted, and they get convicted, and you know, you have to make the person, the woman or the man who's making who's filing charges to make sure that person feels comfortable, feels safe. How can you go in front of a courtroom and say this without a prosecutor? Because the officers in this case did say there was probable cause, but that's just the officer. The officer's not the district attorney. You would talk to the officer and they'll tell you, yes, we have a compelling case here, but it's up to the DA. So my condolences go to the Andrea Ruiz Costa family, to the Keisla family, to the family I just mentioned from Mejete Macho Camacho, to Lorenzo's family, his father, who's taking care of his two daughters. I mean, all those two, and to every member, every person in Puerto Rico has lost their life senselessly for no reason at all. I mean, no death is good, but to every woman who has passed away in the hands of a jealous boyfriend or of a jealous husband or of a jealous ex, my condolences go out to you guys, and I hope that the people of Puerto Rico can change it, how the law can be changed, so a woman doesn't feel that it says, you know, that she doesn't feel impotent. You know, she doesn't feel, can't go to the court. I can't go to the police because the court's just not going to do anything. So you know, you let the cycle go around. We're not supposed to do that, guys. And if you're with a girl, she leaves you, just leave. Don't stay around. Don't be headed to this girl. The same thing around women. If your boyfriend don't want to be with you, your husband don't want to be with you, just go. Do your own thing. Life is too short. You know how short life is? You're here today and you're gone tomorrow.